What's up? Hey, hello everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor season 47, episode 8, the auction episode. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and Survivor auction just ain't what it used to be. So I feel like this auction episode was different in a lot of ways, and I'm still trying to figure out whether or not I liked it. So I'm excited to get to talk about the auction and what it does or it doesn't mean for different players now that it's over with.
Yeah, I thought this was a really fun episode this week. I actually got to watch it last Saturday because there was a watch party sponsored by CBS at UNC. So that was pretty cool. We had to sign NDAs, so you weren't allowed to talk about it. And then I watched it the second time on Wednesday when it premiered on CBS. So I was like, oh, I'm living in the future for a couple of days here. It was pretty cool.
You were living in the future, and she didn't violate her NDA, which is always a good thing, too.
Yeah, as a future lawyer, I skimmed that and I was like, oh, dang, this is like contracts class.
Good times.
So we start off the episode. We see Saul telling Rachel about the advantage from last week. No issues, no drama about it that we see. That was something that I was worried about last week. Like, okay, would Rachel believe him? Would she want to work with him? Like, would other people try to claim this move? Or would people be mad at Saul for using this on someone in the way he did? But seems like there's no problems with it. Saul and maybe Rachel are working together. We see later in the episode Saul like, dang, Rachel can't go. I put too much into this. So seems like maybe they have a budding relationship.
It's the sunk cost fallacy where once you save someone once, you're like, guess I better keep saving them. So I do think it was interesting because Rachel was telling everyone else, I have no idea who sent it to me. And as soon as Saul was like, oh, I'm the one who gave you the advantage, she was like, I knew it was you. And I'm like, did you really know? Did you really know that it was him? So
I feel like that's got to be just BS. Like, oh, yeah, I knew it was you, or like, I wished it were you kind of thing. But there's no way
yeah,
you knew.
there's no way. Especially because they didn't really have a relationship before then. So
Yeah, so them two we might start see working together, people that are more free agents. We see Saul saying, "Oh, he wants to start Saul's secret agents." We also see Saul and Kyle talking, and Kyle says that Saul's like the best person on the island and he really likes him. So, looking good for Saul, even though okay, him and Rome having the beef, maybe Saul being on the bottom when Asia got voted out, he has people that seem to really like him. So I think that's good for Saul in the potential longer term.
yeah, but also again, this is maybe paranoia, but whenever someone starts getting a lot of spotlight, a lot of focus, I'm like, oh, it's all gonna go out soon, and we're showing how he's now becoming a social threat. Like, so
Mm.
I think that's gonna be really interesting to see whether or
And
not
it could
this
be
is.
no, yeah, and I think it could be bad though too, because Kyle, if he loses immunity, he's going home. Rachel getting targeted back to back here. His secret agent allies are people that want to go home.
Yeah. So maybe it's Saul winner equity being built up. Maybe it is the beginning of the Saul downside or downfall, but who knows?
So then we get to the Survivor auction. I think it's the same format as last season where everyone starts off with different amounts of money. And then in the auction, you don't know how many items there are. But starting off with the different amounts of money, everyone is running around the forest. They're looking for tubes like an Easter egg hunt. I low-key felt bad for Andy here. He literally got 0 tubes. And okay, the rules say you're not allowed to share tubes or help each other. But I'm like, dang, for Andy, what the heck happened? Like, you were walking by them and people found it right in front of you. I was like, this sucks for him.
Yeah, I wonder if part of it is just you get to a certain amount of sleep deprived that you just can't notice things. And then also, I feel like it becomes a mental game where once you're like, oh, I haven't found any, like he was saying, you can feel the time ticking down.
Mm.
you maybe like get more stressed, and then the stress makes it less likely for you to be able to like pick up on those tiny details. So yeah.
Low-key sort of giving like performance anxiety where, okay, you're getting in your head so much that now you can't do this simple task anymore. It does feel bad. Okay, it's the Survivor auction. This is a huge freaking deal, and then you can't even have any money to even participate, and you just have to sit there and watch everyone else do the bidding and having food and having fun. So I feel like maybe that's one thing they can change with the auction. Maybe everyone can start off with like $100 or $200. Then you can still do the scavenger hunt to get more money. But it just, I felt bad that he had zero.
Yeah, I kind of felt bad for him too, but I think I would have felt it's kind of his own fault because it wasn't like he happened to only look places where everyone else had looked already. It was like he was literally just walking past tubes. So I think I would have felt more bad if he had like legitimately had no chance at finding money and not just like, oh, he was super unobservant.
So Andy had zero. Sierra had the most amount of tubes and the most amount of money. Also, with the tubes, it's not like, okay, each tube has $10 in it, but each tube has different amounts of money. So, like, Kyle found less tubes, but he still had a lot of money because you could get lucky and the tube you had like $500 in it. So, that's one good thing. So, it's like, okay, maybe if Andy only found one tube, maybe he found a really rich tube and he could have more money than someone who found three tubes.
Yeah. I do think that's kind of annoying though, because like luck of the draw in addition to skill. Like Sierra found like a billion tubes. What if she found the billion tubes that each only had $20 in them or whatever? So I feel like there's like just too much variability with this form of the auction where it's like you all get different amounts of money. You don't know how many different items there's going to be. Like I miss the classic auction format where they all had the same amount of money and there was no vote loss. It was just if you didn't spend your money, you didn't get to eat. So I miss the old Survivor auction.
And I think we've talked about this before. Like the auction was broken in a way, and that's why they stopped doing it because everyone would just save their money to buy the advantage. So something that we talked about was like, okay, if you tell the players there is no advantage, there's literally only food here, good food, bad food, use the money to make good TV, that kind of thing, then okay, everyone can have fun. You're not just hoarding your money to potentially buy an advantage. I think with this, where with this new auction where the person with the most amount of money at the end when the auction randomly closes loses their vote, I feel like by the end of the auction, it's literally just who has the most money now. It's not really fun. There's no more bidding. It's like, okay, Sue, you've got the most amount of money. She's going to get the next item. Okay, Caroline has the next most amount. She's going to get the next item. I feel like that's not an auction after the first few items because then it's just who has the most amount of money. They're obviously going to spend it so they don't lose their vote.
Yeah, most of the auction wasn't actually an auction. Like the only time it was kind of auction-y was when someone with less money was outbid by someone with more money, like who had more total money to begin with. It wasn't like, oh, we all have $500, but I'm only willing to spend 50 of it on this item. It was literally just I have $600 and you have $400, so I'm always going to be able to outbid you. So
Yeah, exactly. So it's not really fun because there's no like competition of like, okay, at the start, the first few items, people are like, okay, $100, and they're like, no, 150, and you're going up like that. So it's more fun because then there's competition on it. At the end, it's just like, okay, who's got the most amount of money? It's less fun because there is no more bidding. You're not competing against each other anymore. It's just like, okay, did Jeff pull the rock that says 8 items or did he pull the rock that said 12 items? Who's going to be the unlucky person that loses their vote here? And we see it's Sam who loses his vote because he had the most amount of money left when the last item were to be called. And maybe people on the internet are saying Andy is doing the new meta here. If you have $0 to start with, there's no chance that you could ever lose your vote.
yeah, I somehow doubt that was Andy's plan, but
Yeah.
I do think it could be new meta. But It would be kind of boring.
It would be interesting going forward. Like, okay, if you knew, hey, I think I'm on the bottom, like my vote is very, very valuable. Maybe I'm only going to find one tube so that I can't accidentally lose my vote. But now, since they're doing the cash back program, you might accidentally get more money in an item that you bought, and then still you could lose your vote. So I feel like if you were that worried about not having a vote and potentially going home and maybe needing your vote to play the shot in the dark or something like that, then maybe smart thing, okay, don't have any dollars. There's no way that you can lose your vote because you can't even participate.
Yeah, but then it's also a question of, will your vote matter that much? Question mark, question mark. So, because I feel like we've been talking about, a lot of votes are becoming more unanimous, except for this episode, obviously. So I'm wondering, like, do you gamble on losing your vote if you think that the vote is going to be unanimous-ish anyway?
Yeah, I think having your vote taken away in the public forum like this is also bad for Sam. Like people aren't going to like talk with you as much because okay, you don't have any equity, you don't have any buying power, voting power because you everyone knows you don't have a vote compared to losing your vote on a journey, then it's secret. You could share it if you want, you don't have to share it, but at least if it's a secret lost vote, then it's sort of okay, I can play or pretend that I still have a vote so I can have some equity. I can persuade people to maybe do what I want. But it does sort of, like we've talked about with the losing your vote, okay, does sort of suck that there's less that you can do because he had the most amount of money. But then you could say maybe he should have bid on things earlier, XYZ. But yeah, it does sort of suck.
It does sort of suck, but like I said, I think the auction should be reworked. It feels like, again, another way to just add production twists into the show instead of like letting the players play.
Yeah. So we see Kyle, he is a vegan and then he switched to vegetarian in the chance that he got to be on Survivor. And of course, because he's a vegetarian, he gets an entire plate of chicken wings as his reward. I thought the wings looked really good. I was like, yum, that looks really yummy to eat. But like, of course, he gets a full meat dish as someone who doesn't eat meat.
When Jeff said something like, your thing does have dairy, but it also has meat, I was expecting like a cheeseburger. And then Kyle could have just like picked off the burger part. But he was talking about the dairy in the ranch, I assume. So I was like, eek. So poor Kyle. I thought it was kind of interesting to hear him say, like, it feels like he was doing something wrong. Just because, I don't know. Feels like it's really hard to be on Survivor with any sort of dietary restrictions.
Yeah, like we saw Liz last season. um,
Yeah.
when I saw these wings, I was like, are these the chickens that Gotta gave up?
Maybe.
Where'd they get these wings? These are the chickens, I think.
I think about it all the time when they like have these food rewards. Like, when do they make the food? Like, was Teeny's mac and cheese like recently out of the oven, or was it like sitting under that cover for like an hour beforehand? Just like, that totally changes the enjoyment of the food to me. Like the temperature of it, like, is it fresh? Is it kind of lukewarm? Because I can't imagine that those chicken wings, after sitting in the heat for like 30 minutes, were like good, you know? But
Hopefully for the auction, it comes out of like the production tents and the production refrigerators. I think it's really gross. Like we were talking before, their eggs, they just leave it in the pot. I'd be so freaked out to eat warm eggs after like X days out there, or even like fish that they win on reward and you can't refrigerate it. I'd be so afraid of getting poisoned.
yeah, especially because like gastrointestinal distress on Survivor is so real. So
Stephen Fishback.
yeah.
So Gabe gets a trade option. I want to know the stats of this. Like, should you stick with your original thing or should you trade at the auction? I want to know that information. He trades and then he gets water. And it's like,
He
that sucks.
doesn't trade.
Okay,
He
he
sticks with
sticks
his
and then he gets
original.
water. So
Yeah.
I'm like, that sucks.
Yeah. I feel like when it's like the 3-door problem and he's like, I'll open one of the doors, and then you're supposed to stick with your original instead of trading. But I feel like when it's just a 50-50 trade and they don't give you any additional information, like there probably isn't like a pattern or a strategy to it. It's probably just luck of the draw. Do you want to flip the coin? So
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, the alternative option was the apple pie with money back, which then Saul gets. Rachel, she gets a clue in her French fries. I thought the commercial break here, the cut to commercial was really cool. It's like her, oh, talking about, oh, I see this clue, and then Saul looking right over at her, cut to commercial. She does get the clue, no one saw. So I was like, ah, this is a fun commercial break cut here. And I do like, okay, the clue is just in a random item. It's not like this advantage is something that you could all bid for, which then it would just be who has the most amount of money. So I like that it's random.
yeah. With the Rachel thing, I thought putting it in the French fries was fun just because when they like did the shot of the advantage, I literally could not see it amongst the French fries because the rolled up paper looks just like the French fries.
Someone
So
eats it by accident.
Andy would do it.
So another fun item was the breakfast item. You pay $200 in order to compete for the Survivor breakfast. And in order to win the breakfast, you had to eat grubs. The first person eating all the grubs wins. You have to pay the 200. And so it's Sam, Caroline, Sue, and Sierra that go up there. Sierra drops out and the rest do it. And Sam swallowed them whole. I feel like that's what you got to do. No chewing, just stick them in.
I feel like with the grubs, I would be like, I would not want to eat the grubs in order to have a chance at the breakfast. Because what if the grubs just unsettled my stomach so much that I could not like enjoy the breakfast now because I just ate grubs and that makes me feel ill. Like, I feel like I have too many food hangups to be on Survivor because I would be like, no, I'm not going to do this for a chance at a breakfast. Thank you very much.
So you'd be like Sierra. I feel like on Survivor, if you were given the choice of grub, I would try it. I probably wouldn't be good at eating it that quick like Sam was, but I'd be like, you're on Survivor, you got to try it.
Mm-hmm.
So Sierra gets an option where you can share it with two other people. It's like peanut butter and chocolate. She picks Gabe and Caroline, which I thought was interesting. I think it sort of makes sense in terms of the auction. Gabe got water, Caroline got fish eyes as her food item. So, okay, these two people got bad food items. You're going to share the peanut butter and chocolate with them. But then I was like, ooh, is this another reason why maybe Andy didn't like them anymore and wanted to vote and work against Sam and Sierra? Like, this is just another jab. Like, he literally had $0 and she didn't pick him to go up there with them. You might also be like, Andy got the merge reward and Gabe and Caroline didn't since they went to tribal council last time. But I would want to know from Andy's point of view, is this just another check mark against Sierra? Like, yo, I don't like her anymore.
Yeah, I would wonder that too. I don't know. I feel like this auction, the bad food items were too clustered near the end. Like, I feel like everyone started with good food items and then the bad ones were near to the end and it was annoying.
So Sam loses his vote. Rachel gets a hidden immunity idol clue. So when we go back to camp, we learn that it is hidden in the corner of the tarp, which is on top of the shelter. So Rachel gets the machete and she has to cut the idol out of the tarp. Everyone is basically going to be in the camp all the time because there's like so many people on the island right now. So I was like, dang, that's a really tough get for the idol.
Yeah, that is a really tough get, but I feel like Rachel pulled it off really well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've talked about this before, how some idols seem like they're so much easier to find than others, and they really need to like figure out something to make all idols at least somewhat like on the same level. Like you could make the argument that this one is harder to find because it's later in the game and so it's more valuable. But I feel like compared to some of the other idols we saw earlier this season, this is way harder.
Yeah, I sort of wanted someone to like walk up on her or like, why are you taking the machete behind the shelter? Like, what are you doing over there, girl? But no one saw, no one walked around the shelter, no one heard like sawing happening on the edge of the shelter. So I'm like, ah, good for Rachel. She went from almost being voted out last week to having a hidden immunity idol next, like this week. I'm like, that is really from the bottom to the top here.
Yeah, we stand Rachel is basically what I'm hearing.
So we get to the immunity challenge. You have to hold up 25% of your body weight, except Jeff says, a twist, one man and one woman winner. And people obviously weren't doing Charlie what he said last season, the grippers, so you can get the bucket back up. Everyone tried to wrangle their bucket back up after it started to slip. No one was doing the grippers.
No one was doing the grippers, but also I'm trying to remember, would Charlie's season have aired before they went on the island?
I
I
think they
can't keep track
might
of
have
the
saw
filming.
that part. Like you get, I think they didn't see Liz's meltdown. That was like the episode that they left, the
Okay.
Applebee's.
Just because I can never keep the filming schedule straight in my mind. But it could be that they heard Charlie say that and didn't have enough time to implement before they actually went out on the island. Because those
That's
gripper
true.
things are one of the things where like you have to build up slowly. You can't just like suddenly be the best.
You're right. We need to start working on our grip strength now. She got to buy these off Amazon and start doing the workout.
We need to start working on our grip strength yesterday.
Yeah, basically. So for the women, it is down to Rachel and Sue. For the men, it is down to Andy and Kyle. I thought this was good drama because we were like, okay, Rachel could maybe get voted out here. Andy, too, could maybe get voted out here, but they could potentially win immunity and it would cause drama amongst the camp. But Sue wins, Kyle wins. For me, I'm like, dang, Sue, pretty good at challenges. She and Kyle were the last two competing in the first immunity challenge that Kyle won. And then she wins here. She becomes the oldest woman to ever win an individual immunity challenge. So I was like, dang, people might want to target Sue because she's pretty good at these endurance challenges.
Yeah, and at the ripe old age of 45, too.
She doesn't need a wheelchair for the challenge.
No, she does not.
So Kyle wins also. Everyone's like, oh, Kyle, 3 in a row. But like we said last week, technically, the second one, Teeny and Genevieve did beat Kyle, which I feel like we should have talked about it last week. But I'm like, if I were Teeny or Genevieve, I'd be like, yo, can I get a necklace? You probably wouldn't say that because you don't want a target on your back. But watching it back, I'd be like, dang, I could have had that moment with Jeff and get a necklace. And that's a survivor dream.
Yeah, I don't really understand the like one man, one woman thing unless it's a challenge that clearly favors one gender over the other. But especially because they already normalize these things by doing like, we do 10% of your starting body weight rather than like everyone does 50 pounds. So I don't know.
Yeah, seems like they just wanted more people safe. But Kyle winning 3 in a row, whenever he loses, like we said last time, I think he's going to get voted out.
Yeah, poor guy. I feel bad because I like Kyle a lot as like a human, even though I feel like he hasn't really been doing much on Survivor other than winning challenges. But he's every time he speaks, I'm happy.
So we go back to camp. Everyone else is talking. Okay, we want to vote one of Gata out. The other two teams are going to link up. So who do we want to vote out between Sam, Sierra, or Rachel? We said this before going into the merge. Sam and Sierra are really the only like known power duo out there. People thought they were together, then they are voting together. So people would want to target them, split them up because they are a known power couple compared to other people's alliances, which might be a little bit more secretive and people don't just peg them as, okay, these two are definitely working together. We see people want to target Rachel also, saying that she's a sneaky threat that's going to take our spot closer to the end, which is probably true. The fake plan see as voting between Gabe or Caroline, the two unsafe Tukus. And it's what we said last week. I was like, why would you vote Gabe out last week? When people want to target Gabe now, you keep Gabe around because people are going to want to target him because he's a big threat. I wouldn't waste my vote last week on that split tribal council to vote Gabe out.
Yeah. I feel like in general, it's good, like the whole meat shield strategy that has kind of been developing, where you want to keep someone who is more threatening than you for as long as possible. So that, like, Gabe is always going to be an easy person to, like, route.
Yeah. Either me cut out or you cut out.
Yeah, I don't know. The internet is being the internet.
Yeah, I'd say you keep Gabe around, not too long, but you keep him around to vote him out. Similarly, like Kyle, first time he doesn't win immunity, you vote him out. So I do understand like the women saying, let's vote Rachel out, because that is true. Like you will get to vote out Gabe, Kyle, all these bigger threats, Sam, but someone like Rachel, people don't maybe see like, oh, she's not threatening. That's why I'd be like, oh, we should vote Teeny out because no one's talking about them. You'd be like, okay, we need to vote the people out that people aren't talking about.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things also where some people like Rachel, like at Final Tribal, will be able to make a really good argument for why they should win, because even though they're not the ones that people are talking about, they can still point out and say, like, this is what I did, this is what I did, this is what I did, in a way that maybe some other people can't.
Exactly. So even though it's sort of like a unanimous vote, there's a lot of discussion and problems about, okay, which one of the three do we want to vote out? Everyone's got their own agenda. We see Genevieve, Caroline wanting Rachel out. Between Sam and Sierra, there's even discussions. Teeny wants to keep Sierra around because they're closer to her. Saul doesn't want to vote Rachel out because he saved her last week. So I would want to know, like, how did they get to the split vote of Sam and Sierra when there were people that wanted to vote Rachel? But then, like, how did it end up on Sierra too, with Teeny trying to help Sierra out here? So I'd want some more background information on that.
I feel like we might get more background information next episode, because I feel like they've been doing this thing where they like don't show all of the strategy until after the vote is done, because they know that showing all the strategy up front will make it very obvious who is voted out. And so I anticipate that we're going to get like some back at camp type stuff where Teeny's like, yeah, I wanted to save Sierra, but it was better for my game not to push too hard, or something along those lines where they explain it a little more clearly.
And maybe it's the rhetoric where, like, in the male female partnership duos, like we've said, usually the girl gets voted out in these partnerships. So it could be a similar thing here. They're like, okay, let's keep Sam around because he would be a bigger target. If we voted Sam out here and kept Sierra around, Sierra would be more likely to be able to integrate, fall back into the background. She wouldn't still be a target compared to getting Sierra out here and keeping Sam around. Sam sort of falls into that Kyle Gabe circle where, okay, he's still someone we should vote out and people want to vote out. He won't be able to fall into the background as much as Sierra could.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way that it goes. I think also part of it is, in some ways, Sierra has been more in the forefront because she also had the other like girls alliance that she was a part of. This episode, she was the one who like found the most money. And so it could just be one of those things where like a recency bias of like, oh yeah, we talked a lot about Sierra finding all of her money. So cognitively, it makes more sense to then vote Sierra out, even if there like is also an argument to be made for voting Sam out.
Should have voted. They should have split. We said Sierra needed to throw Sam under the bus to save herself. So we get the Andy transformation. I thought this was funny. He got the whole slow-mo roll, taking his glasses off, rolling his hair out. I was like, okay, the wrath of Andy is starting. He's ready to get his revenge on everyone.
Yeah, the wrath of Andy is starting. I do wonder though, like, do people actually listen to Andy that much? Where like people, Andy was like, I want to get them out, and people are like, yeah, Andy, let's do that. Or I feel like maybe it's giving him credit where he might not have deserved credit.
Yeah, I would say this vote is like everyone on the island's vote. I would say this isn't like Andy's vote of him flipping on Sam and Sierra. It seems like the general consensus was, okay, we don't want to work with Gata. Obviously, we're not voting out Andy here. Let's split it between Sam, Sierra, Rachel. Who do we want to put it on, kind of thing. So it would be interesting though, because it seems like Andy, even though he's like not getting voted out, I would want to know if he's actually respected by people on the island, because I could see Andy getting to the end and like Sam and Sierra might be super pissed at him because he flipped. And like it just seems like, at least with Sam and Sierra and like Rachel talking about him this episode, they're like, oh yeah, sometimes I forget he even exists. So it seems like maybe they wouldn't respect him even if he gets to the end.
Yeah, I feel like Andy could get to the end as a goat, but not as a strategic player.
Yeah, unless he like somehow gets more respect, but it would be interesting. Like, would Sierra be really butthurt over Andy voting her out, being in on the plan when her and Sam weren't on the plan?
Potentially, I feel like, but it really depends.
Yeah, I would say potentially too, because it's sort of that thing. It's like if you're bested by someone that you view as an equal, you're like, okay, good game. If you're bested by someone that Sam has said, oh, I'm coaching him, I'm just helping him out, he like doesn't know how to play Survivor. If you're bested by someone that you don't view as equal to you, I think you're pissed off.
Yeah, I think it also depends though on how good Andy is at like massaging the story, because I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of it can also depend on like how well you stroke that person's ego. Like, oh, I voted you out because I knew you were more threatening than Sam, or something like that. Then maybe she would be willing to be like a little more forgiving, versus like, I voted you out because I hate you. But I don't know.
He needed John around to help him with the speech writing.
Yeah, he really did. Rip John.
So we get to tribal council. Rachel, so smart, I think, the idea to play the shot in the dark, gauge everyone's reactions to you playing the shot in the dark. Oh, if they look super worried, then shot in the dark doesn't hit. Then maybe you play the hidden immunity idol. I thought this was really good. Okay, test your gut, test your radar. If the votes did come against her this episode, but it's like now she knows, okay, my gut is correct. I played the shot in the dark, like technically incorrect. I played the idol. I didn't play the idol, which was the right move here, but I was still correct in that the votes weren't going the way I thought they were going, and that everyone did flip on me, Sam, and Sierra. So I think it'll be a good gut test for her moving forward. Like, okay, I can trust myself. I thought things were fishy, and they were fishy.
Yeah, I Rachel's move was really cool, and I feel like Rachel's win equity definitely went up this episode because using the shot in the dark in that way was so cool. So cool.
Yeah, I would wonder, would her playing the shot in the dark make like Caroline, Genevieve want to vote her out more? Because they're like, yo, this girl is smart. She played the shot in the dark. She assumed something was weird that was happening. Would that be more of a reason to target? Or for other people, it's like, yo, she doesn't have a shot in the dark anymore. We don't even need to like fake it because she doesn't have anything. We don't think she has anything. We can just vote her out. So it'll be interesting to see, like, does playing the shot in the dark wrong technically here heighten your threat level or reduce your threat level? Because we see so many people worried, like, oh, we need to split votes, we need to fake it so they don't play the shot in the dark. So now she doesn't have one, so maybe it's less of a threat.
But also, it's better to raise your threat level by playing your shot in the dark and then have that information to whether or not to play your idol and stay in the game rather than worry about raising your threat level by doing it and get voted out because you weren't willing to raise your threat level a little.
No, I agree. I think it's a good move. It'll be interesting moving forward whether it raises her threat level or not.
Yeah.
But the first vote, it was a tie, 4-4-1. I wish we got some talking of how they're splitting. Like, okay, are the men voting one way, the women voting the other way? How did they get to the 4-4? And then, okay, if there's a revote, we're all voting Sierra out. Hopefully, we get some background information on that next week.
Mm-hmm. Fingers crossed for that back at camp scene.
Yeah, because we see in the next time on Survivor, Sam is really pissed off. Someone mentions, why don't we vote Kyle out? So maybe Kyle loses immunity next week.
Or that could be a pre-immunity thought, and then he wins immunity.
Yeah, I'm like, do I wager my bets on Kyle winning immunity so I can get more points in my Survivor draft that I'm doing? But then
Yeah.
if he loses, he's probably getting voted out. So it's a very high risk.
Yeah. High risk, high reward.
Yeah. So let us know what you thought of the auction in the comments down below. Do you like this new format or do you wish it would go back to the OG format of the auction? What did you think of Rachel getting the idol clue out of the tarp and her playing the shot in the dark at Tribal Council? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching.